Have you ever played Kirby before? You know, the little pink dude who can suck up monsters to gain special abilities? Have you ever wondered how things will turn out in Terraria if you played as Kirby? Well, now you can, because this mod lets you become Kirby and do everything that Kirby can. There are many monsters in Terraria, so the question is, what kind of transformations are there, and are they strong enough to take down the final boss Moonlord? Stay tuned, because you're gonna find out. Spawning into the world, I noticed two new items in my inventory. The Puffball's Essence that transforms me into Kirby, granting me the abilities to do puff jumping, swimming, negate fall damage, and have a smaller hitbox. Equipping this item also allows me to use the Guiding Star, which is the other item that I had. Once I transformed into Kirby, I of course had to test out these abilities. I was able to do about 5 puff jumps in the air, and holding down jump enabled me to float. The other thing that I really wanted to do right away was to start sucking up some enemies. The Guiding Star is what lets me do just that. After inhaling, I can either press left click to shoot the monster back out as a star, or press down to swallow, granting me their abilities, but enemies with higher health and defense takes longer to inhale. And I had a passive of plus 5% damage reduction. A nearby slime was the first thing I inhaled, and swallowing turned me into a slime Kirby. Walking now does mini bounces. Looking back at the Guiding Star, it now had the slime power up with 16 damage, 5% critical strike chance, left click shoots gel and spikes, I bounce around, and can float in water. There's also a passive that makes most slime become friendly, so there won't be any aggro towards me. And if I do end up touching them, they won't hurt me at all. I attacked a nearby slime, and I've gotta say, for my first transformation, it was pretty decent. Right clicking also shot a harmless stream of slime, which I thought was a nice little touch. Now with all that out of the way, let's actually get things going. I chopped down some trees for wood, and then went down a cave to end up finding some life crystals and a lost girl who I killed for the metal detector. Because my character is also 2 blocks tall, I could now fit in a 2 block tall gap, which meant that mining to places would be faster. While I was underground, I saw 3 enemies bunched up together, so I figured I'd try sucking them all up and swallowing to see what would happen. I transformed into an even pinkier Kirby, but it turned out I received the Pinky Slime power up that had 20 damage, left clicks that shoot gel balls, and increased speed after taking damage, so this was basically a buffed up version of the regular slime power up. Shooting the gel balls was more of a burst, but there was a cooldown before I could shoot again, and right clicking threw out bouncy glow sticks. As I wanted to use this transformation for longer, my curiosity got the better of me because as soon as I saw a bat, I sucked it right away, and got the wing power up. This had 12 damage, can throw feathers, do a dash, holding left click while dashing does a dive, and a passive of 25% increased flight time. I ended up liking this one a lot because it had a wide ranged attack and good mobility. But of course, as soon as I saw a skeleton, I transformed again into the Undead Kirby with 20 damage, able to swing a zombie arm, throw bones, and plus 5 defense. This had a close and ranged attack which I liked, but I still preferred Wing Kirby. I then followed a fairy that led me to a web chest containing the Web Slinger. Sucking and swallowing a wall creeper turned me into Spider Kirby with 18 magic and summon damage, shoots webs, and throw baby spiders with a passive that lets me slide down walls and immunity to webbed debuff. I was surprised to see my webs explode into a bigger web, and my spiders dealing the venom debuff which dealt 15 damage per tick. I swallowed a flinch that gave me 8 damage, can throw snowballs, reduce damage from cold sources, and an alpha snowflakes that attacked nearby enemies. This wasn't very good, so it didn't stick with me for very long. I found Hermes boots, sucked in an ice bat, and this was probably by far the strongest transformation I had, with 26 damage, ice breath to freeze enemies, ice cubes that deal even more damage against frozen enemies, immunity to frozen and chilled, and I can go over liquids and fire blocks while moving. When attacking, the enemies actually freeze in place for quite a while, which made landing ice cubes a lot easier. Teleporting back up to the surface, I began building a storage area to store my items away. I also mined a bunch of ores, so I crafted myself full tungsten armor for a total of 18 defense, a gold pickaxe, and then went back underground to find the suspicious looking eye and a couple more life crystals. To prepare for my fight against the Eye of Cthulhu, I built a platform and waited until night, but it turned out to be a blood moon, which only meant one thing: more swallowing. I swallowed a zombie holding a zombie arm, which made me become Sword Kirby. This had 28 damage, can do a sword/slash combo, at full health release a sword beam, dash forward with a stab, can go downwards while in air, and plus 5 melee armor penetration. This was good and all, but not really suited against the first boss, so I swallowed a zombie for its bone throwing attack, and then summoned the boss. The damage was good, and same can be said about the attack speed, so it didn't take long to defeat. I had another summon, so I wanted to try something a little extreme, and that is trying to swallow the boss. But it didn't work, obviously. I sucked nearby monsters and spat it out at the boss, dealing surprising damage. This damage depended on how many monsters I sucked up at a time. When there were no more monsters left to use, I noticed that the boss left star trails whenever it dashed. These stars were suckable and dealt even more damage compared to spitting out monsters. Once the blood moon had ended, I went to the jungle to max out my health. I also got the poison transformation from swallowing a bee that let me shoot poison bubbles and allows me to rip an explosive fart. After reaching max health, I built some NPC houses and traveled to the Crimson to take on the Brain of Cthulhu. I swallowed one of the monsters there, and could now throw bouncy flesh that inflict bleeding, and release miasma, which made debuffs deal more damage. There was also the passive of the Crimson empowering me, but I didn't exactly know what it meant. If I had to guess, it probably meant that whenever I was in the Crimson, then I would deal more damage. I built an arena, and then broke Crimson orbs to summon the boss. While fighting this boss, I found out that the Crimson transformation was going to be my main power-up, until I found a better one. After defeating the Brain, I returned back home, crafted the Deathbringer pickaxe, Crimson armor, and then made my way to the dungeon to take on Skeletron. And I got so confused because when I attacked the hands, I was dealing 100 damage. I know that the hands take more damage than the head, but it shouldn't have been that much more. Once Skeletron was defeated, I went down and grabbed the Cobalt Shield. I swallowed a Dark Caster and became the Caster Kirby. This was my most disliked transformation since it uses mana which I didn't have enough of, and teleporting cost 100 mana. I grabbed the Shadow Key and then drank a Gravitation Potion to look for accessories up on Sky Islands. After collecting the shiny red balloon and lucky horseshoe, I began mining down to hell. After reaching hell, I swallowed a hellbat and became Fire Kirby. I can now spit fire and do a flame dash. I also emit light and have immunity to the on fire debuff. These abilities would be good against the wall of flesh because the fire can pass through multiple enemies, and if the boss ever got too close to me, then I could dash away. I mined a bunch of hellstone, made the molten pickaxe and the molten armor, but I realized that the crimson armor was way better since it increased my damage and gave life regen, while the molten armor only affected my defense. Before I took on the wall of flesh, I wanted to farm some goblin scouts for tattered cloth to summon the goblin army. But while making my way to the left side of the world, I stumbled upon a meteorite, and swallowing a meteor head gave me the ability to transform into a stone statue to become invulnerable to most attacks. But I would not be able to move, and I'd deal 5 times less damage. To actually deal damage with this transformation, I had to fly up above an enemy and then transform to drop onto them. After collecting enough tattered cloth, I made the goblin battle standard and summoned the army. Swallowing any of the goblins turned me into the goblin Kirby. Left click to throw spiky projectiles, and right click to throw a thief dagger that steals loot from enemies. The loot depended on the enemies, so for example, using it against these goblins stole some coins and spiky balls from them. The passive also gave plus 20 max health. Once I defeated the goblin army, I found the goblin tinkerer, bought rocket boots, and the workshop. I combined my accessories together to make spectre boots, obsidian shield, and I really wanted to make the blue horseshoe balloon, so I went underground to find a cloud in a bottle to make it. With everything equipped, I could now do many more puff jumps. It was finally time to take on the wall of flesh, so I went back down to hell, threw in the voodoo doll to summon it, and for some odd reason, my fire attacks did over 500 damage and critical hits that dealt over 1,000 damage, which took down the boss insanely fast. With that, I was now in hard mode. I opened up the treasure bag, got the ranger emblem that increased my damage to 49, and then went to break crimson altars to spawn in the hard mode ores. The first hard mode monster I sucked and swallowed was the Ichor Sticker. This turned out to be a crazy transformation because the attacks were really strong. Left click to shoot Ichor, right click to shoot Ichor streams upwards. I did not expect there to be this many Ichor streams. After mining enough hard mode ores, I made the adamantite armor, but I didn't know which helmet to make since I dealt regular damage, so I made the helmet that gave the most defense. I also wanted wings, so I farmed wyverns for souls of light to make demon wings. With it equipped, I could now fly all the way up to the top of the world. While I was in hell, I swallowed a tortured soul and became the Hellfire Kirby. This was basically a buffed up version of the fire transformation, which I used to take on my first mechanical boss, Skeletron Prime. And just like Skeletron, I dealt massive damage to the hands. After defeating Skeletron Prime, I summoned the Destroyer, and I somehow killed it within seconds. I seriously don't know how I was dealing so much damage, but after the Destroyer, I summoned the Twins last. With all 3 mechanical bosses defeated, I made the pickaxe axe, hollowed armor, and then made my way towards the jungle to find the Plantera bulb. But during my way there, I found a mimic, so I swallowed it up and became the Metal Kirby. This transformation had 100 damage, no active abilities, but instead only passives. A heavy and tough body, attackers take damage from touching me, holding the guiding star makes attackers take extra damage, but all other weapons in my inventory had its damage dropped drastically. Not that it really mattered though. I was extremely slow, but all monsters only dealt 1 damage to me, and I was going to test if it's still the same against bosses, because if that's the case, then I literally won't have to do a single thing. I made it to the jungle and found the Plantera bulb. I was about to make an arena, but there wasn't any point if bosses only dealt 1 damage. So I just broke the bulb and I was right. Plantera only dealt a single point of damage to me, so I did nothing except walk around and let the boss kill itself. Once Plantera had been defeated, I got the Spore Sack that'll help increase my DPS, and for Golem, well, I pretty much did the exact same thing. Stood in one spot and let the boss kill itself. In the temple, I tried swallowing the lizards, so I expected to turn into one of them, but nothing happened. Same goes for the enemies during the solar eclipse. I thought maybe I could transform into the Reaper Kirby to shoot scythes and phase through blocks, so I was a bit disappointed. Afterwards, I went back to the dungeon and summoned the Lunatic Cultist, and once again, I used the metal power-up. This took longer since the boss constantly moved and levitated. After defeating the Lunatic Cultist, I then went on to destroy the Celestial Pillars, starting with the Solar Pillar. And I tried sucking these enemies, but it didn't work. I was really looking forward to become a Solar Kirby. After destroying the last pillar, it was finally time to take on the final boss, Moonlord. Alright, that's going to be it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed. I'll leave all the mods I've used in the description below if you guys want to try this out for yourselves. If you've enjoyed watching, don't forget to leave a like, comment down below if you have any other mod or video ideas you want me to try out, and of course subscribe to the channel. Also, shout out to the creator of this mod, it was hella fun to play. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Peace!